Hey everyone, I'm Sandi Colwell and welcome to another episode of Quilt Cabana Corner. Today we're talking about our first quilts and what inspired them and how old we were when we started. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I got started with my time in quilting. So everybody starts somewhere, right? And I come from a long line of sewists. I have grandmothers that sewed, my mother sewed, my sister sewed. Basically everyone around me was doing it, and I could have cared less because I was young and just didn't really care about it. All that kind of changed though when my kids entered preschool and I was in my early 30s. And as you know, with preschool, all of your time is kind of like in 1.5 hour increments. So you have like an hour and a half before they start school, an hour and a half till you got to pick them up, an hour and a half while they nap. And it kind of makes it hard to really accomplish anything. But during that time, I had started watching HGTV in the mornings while I was feeding, one was at school and I'm feeding another one. And I started watching Carol Duvall, and I loved that show. I could not get enough of Carol Duvall. I loved the scrapbooking, I loved the polymer clay, I loved anything she was doing. And in fact, one of my greatest memories is when my kids were little, we would set up our own Carol Duvall holiday workshop because it would be happening like an all-day marathon on HGTV. She'd be doing this, crafty holiday workshop, and we loved it. And I got going on clay. So polymer clay was kind of the first big crafty thing I was doing. And I partnered up with Polyform, and they published some of my projects that I had been doing, and that kind of got the ball rolling for me. And right after Carol Duvall would be Alex Anderson with the Quilt Show. I think it was called the Quilt Show. I'm getting confused with what it's called now, but it was Alex Anderson's quilting show. And I thought to myself, oh, that looks kind of cool. Maybe someday I'll try that. But it looked real fussy, and I was like, I don't know. But anyways, to back up a little bit, when I was in high school, my grandmother gave us all a sewing machine. And my sewing machine went right in the back of my closet because, as I said, I was young, I was in high school. I wasn't really interested in sewing anything. And so then one day I said to my mother, hey, I think I want to pull that sewing machine out. Can you teach me how to sew? So she told me to come up to her house and she would show me the first step on how to sew a child's apron, and then I would sew it and she would watch the kids while I did it. So no sooner did I finish sewing that child's apron, Amanda, who was probably, I don't know, maybe 6 or something, said, hey Mom, can you make me a dress? And I was like, of course I can make you a dress. Called my mother, Mom, how do I make a dress? So at that time, the Walmart near us had a really great fabric department. So I went down to Walmart, I bought a pattern, I bought some fabric, and with my mother's help, I made 2 dresses, one for each of my 2 oldest daughters. And that was really fun. And then I kind of got the bug, and I started to sew ponchos and skirts, and one year they all had matching Easter outfits and all that kind of stuff. But as you know, when the kids get older, they don't want to wear what you're making them. So I decided to teach myself to quilt, and that was in 2004. And at Christmas time, I went to Joann's, and I happened to hit upon a lady who worked there, and she was fabulous. I told her what I wanted to do. She took me all around the store, and she helped me pick out all my sewing tools, rotary mats, cutter, quilting needles, everything she thought that I was going to need to make a project. And that project were these checkerboard placemats. And I made 4 of them, and I did a pretty good job. The binding is not exactly how I would do binding now, but they look pretty good, and I used them for years and years. But my very first quilt was this masterpiece right here, the blue and pink gingham. And I made that with my grandmother when I was very young, probably, I would say, no more than 8 years old, and I only very vaguely remember even making it. But you can see, I'm not going to bother showing, you won't be able to see on the camera, but you can see her nice stitches, and then you can see these big chunky like 1/2-inch stitches. Those were mine. But we made that together, and I've always kept it, and I like to think that this was actually the very beginning of it all. So the next project that I made after that, after the checkerboard placemats, I got Endeavorous, and I made, excuse me, I have that lingering cough that just won't go away, and I made the sewing machine cover, and actually, and it's half, it's log cabin blocks is what it is. I don't know if you can make it out, but it's log cabin blocks, and it's all quilted. And I actually made my mom one too in blue and yellow, so we each have one. And I kind of just from there taught myself, learned everything I could, read everything I could, watched everything I could, and wasn't afraid to try some new techniques. The next things that I moved into were fusible applique quilts, which I love doing. As I think we talked about in one of the earlier videos, it reminded me of scrapbooking, which is why I liked it so much. And from there, I ended up making a whole bunch of applique quilts, and I sent them off to Leisure Arts, which was a publisher, and in an email, just a photo of them, of pictures I took of the quilts outside. I thumbtacked them to the kids' swing set, and I got a call from Leisure Arts like just a few hours later, and they were like, "Oh, we want you to send us the quilts. We're going to have you do a book." And I was so excited that I packed all those quilts in a box, took it to the UPS store, shipped it off, got home and realized I never put one piece of contact information inside that box. So I ended up having to call Leisure Arts and say, "You contacted me about doing a book and I sent you all the quilts, and guess what? In my excitement, I failed to put any contact info in there." And they were like, "Oh no, we'll know who you are." And actually I forgot to pull it out, but give me a second, I can find one. This was the book. So this was my book with Leisure Arts, and it was published quite a few years ago now. You can actually still get it on Amazon or through my site, but it was Little Quilts for Big Occasions, and that was really exciting for me to have them in a published book form. So that's kind of how I started. I hope that you leave me some comments and let me know how you started and at what age you started. I think it's fun to share these stories of how we got inspired to be the quilters that we are today. And I think that the most important thing is to be proud of your earliest projects, even if they're not the greatest. As I said before, we all start somewhere. So be proud of those early projects and just always keep trying to get more accurate and learn more techniques and have fun with it, because that's what we're all doing it for. It's supposed to be fun, and it can be a great learning experience, whether you take a class online or you take a class in your community or you come see me for a class or whatever. Join a guild. Just get out there and expand your horizons with it, because there's always something that you can learn. Even if you're the most seasoned quilter, there's always that one more thing that you could learn. So if you want to see more of my work, you can head over to my website and blog. You can catch up with me over there. I update the blog weekly. And you can find me at www.quiltcabanapatterns.com. Thanks for joining me today, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.